Not too long ago in this country, stores used to operate in a different way. If there was a store, like a general goods store, that you went to often, you'd be able to go into that store, write your name down on a ledger, and then basically walk out of that store with whatever you want. And you could come and do that every day or every couple days whenever you would need something. And then you would have this account set up, and you would be able to pay this account maybe at the end of the week or maybe at the end of the month. A phrase that came out of this, or out of this idea of having an account at a store, was to keep short accounts. It was a wonderful principle. What that means is basically these accounts that you would have at a store where you owed a certain amount of money, you would keep short accounts. You'd pay them off quickly, or you'd pay them off as soon as you could. You wouldn't let them go overdue, and you wouldn't rack up massive amounts of debt. In recovery, we say the exact same thing. As a Christian, we are actually called to keep short accounts. Now, I'm not talking about going to Walmart and picking up deodorant. What I'm talking about is our relationships. In Matthew 5, Jesus gives us this teaching. So if you are offering your gift on the altar, and there you remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar. First go and be reconciled with your brother or sister, and then come and offer your gift. Jesus is saying, even if you are in the middle of worship and you realize that your brother or sister has something against you, stop what you're doing. Go and make peace. There's two things I want to point out about that. First, Jesus is focused on unity. He's saying that the unity is even more important than what you're doing. He's saying you can come back and worship, but you need to worship with a clean and a pure heart. If you realize you have something against your brother or sister, there's something that you need to make right, go and do it, and then come back and worship. The second thing I want to point out is that he's telling us to be the peacemaker. He's saying, you go, you take the initiative. Don't wait for that person to come to you. Go and make peace. Go and make reconciliation. This is exactly what God did for us. He brought reconciliation to us. It wasn't anything we did. It was everything that God did. Step 10 says this: we continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. When we go through the steps, when we're in recovery, we make an inventory and we make amends for the people on that inventory that we need to make amends to. However, just because we've made our list, it doesn't mean we're done messing things up. It doesn't mean that we are completely done hurting people. So part of working the steps is that you're going to make amends promptly as soon as you realize that you need to make amends. It's an ongoing thing for the rest of your life. You continue to take a personal inventory on a daily basis. Ask yourself, is there someone I need to make amends to? Did I hurt somebody? Did I do wrong to somebody? This is how we're going to keep short accounts. If we make our amends as soon as we possibly can, our accounts are going to be kept short. We're not going to have guilt hanging over our heads. We're not going to have resentment hanging over our heads. We're not going to give anger a foothold to dwell inside of us. To help us remember this, let's look at the word 10. Let's use it as an acrostic for the T. Take time to do a daily inventory. If you're not doing a daily inventory, you're actually not working the steps. It's part of it. As a Christian, you should have your daily quiet time with the Lord in prayer, in Bible study. We're going to get more into that next week. We're going to talk more about our quiet time, but make this part of your quiet time, your daily inventory. Just look back on your day. Write it down in a journal. What went well? What didn't go well? The E stands for evaluate the good and bad. Don't just focus on the bad stuff, what you need to do to make amends or who you hurt, but also focus on what went well. Who did you help? Who did you encourage? And the N in the letter 10 is the crux of all of this, and this is our need to admit our wrongs promptly. When you're going through your daily inventory, ask yourself every single day, who did I hurt yesterday? Or who was I rude to? Who might I have offended? Who do I need to make amends to? How am I going to do that? When am I going to do that? Hopefully the very next time you see that person. Hopefully you're even going to seek out that person to make those amends. I can't tell you how freeing this was for me when I started doing this. In my daily journaling, I started asking myself, who do I need to make amends to from yesterday? And a name would pop in my head, and I would, as soon as possible, go and make those amends. Sometimes it was just a text message. Sometimes I would just shoot a text that, hey, I was kind of grumpy here in this interaction. I apologize. I shouldn't have done that. I'm sorry. Sometimes I'd have to go and approach the person and talk to them about it. But whenever I would do it, it was off of my conscience. I felt clean. I felt relief. Not only is this going to help you feel lighter and feel better, but it's going to show the world the difference that's happening in your life. This is the kind of thing people are going to notice. When they see you coming back and pointing out your wrongs and taking responsibility for them, that is when they're going to see the change that Christ is making in you. Romans 14 says this, "Therefore let us no longer judge one another. Instead, decide never to put a stumbling block or pitfall in the way of your brother or sister." Let's face it, the people in our life are typically not stupid. They know when they've been hurt. They know when we've done something to wrong them. And this is when we get in those situations that we are not being that example of Christ and we're actually giving God a bad name. How many stories do you hear of people leaving the church because of the hypocrites in the church? Or you hear people just being completely against the idea of Jesus just because of how someone is treated by a Christian. When people in your life see that you have the humility of Christ, you have the humility to fess up to your wrongs, to come and approach them and ask for their forgiveness, that is when they're going to start seeing Christ in you. Right before Jesus was taken to the cross, in John 17, we have this long priestly prayer, an entire chapter where Jesus prays for his disciples and he prays for us. He prays for the church around the world, everyone that would come after the disciples and the apostles. And he prays for us in verse 21 here. Above all, he prays for unity. He says, "May they all be one, as you, Father, are in me and I am in you. May they also be in us, so that the world may believe you sent me." Two things. Jesus is praying for unity. When we go and make reconciliation, ask for peace, and be an actual peacemaker, that is driving unity. Second, Jesus says if we do this, the world is going to know that Jesus is real, that the Father sent Jesus. That's going to be our witness to the gospel. Just the fact that they're seeing us unified is going to be a witness to the cross. That's a beautiful thing. As Christians, we are called to keep short accounts. As soon as we know, as soon as we are convicted that we've hurt somebody, we need to go and make it right. Whether it's a family member or a coworker, or maybe it's your boss. It's not always easy, but it's always going to be the right thing to do. Failing to keep short accounts is possibly what got you into recovery into the first place. Whenever we look at our inventory that we first make and it's pages and it feels like it's this long, long list, that's a long account. That's because we failed to keep short accounts and we put things off and we didn't make amends and we didn't seek out forgiveness. We didn't seek out unity. Your focus questions for this week are, would you say that you are likely to keep short accounts, or do you tend to avoid making amends? And 2, evaluate your last week. Who do you need to make amends to? How and when will you do it? Keeping short accounts is something that we have to consider on a daily basis. I hope it's part of your daily routine, your daily quiet time, your daily inventory time. Next week, we're going to talk a little bit more about how to establish that daily quiet time. There are certain things we need to come back to every day if we're going to work the steps. We're going to live in principles 7 and 8, as we say around here. Thank you for joining us this week. Have a great week. Enjoy the open share groups, and I will see you next time.